Okay, so let's talk my birth story. So, to kind of preface this, almost 3 years ago, whenever I gave birth at the hospital, it was a pretty traumatic experience for me. All birth is pretty traumatic, but for this one, for my first birth, it was 23 hours of laboring and then 2 hours of pushing. And I was at the hospital probably from the afternoon until 3 o'clock in the morning whenever I gave birth to my daughter. So I was there for a really long time. So the hospital and the environment just like really stressed me out, and just kind of like didn't make me feel good. And so this labor and this birth, I wanted to labor as long as possible at home. And I wanted to do that last time, but my water broke at home because my husband had like pushed on my back and it popped inside of me. And so it was definitely like ready, but it was very unexpected. And so being a first time mom, I thought, your water breaks, you have to go to the hospital. And as I'll tell in a second, that's not always the case. So this time I just like wanted to labor at home as long as possible, as long as I possibly could, and then go in. So just with that in mind, this is kind of like the birth story, a little bit of trauma from my first one, and so trying to do it a lot differently this second time around. So starting at probably 37 weeks, my mucus plug came out, which, fun fact, your mucus plug actually like rejuvenates itself or like keeps growing if it falls out, because it's like there to protect from bacteria or anything like that. So just because it falls out doesn't mean you're going into labor, which I didn't know. So it fell out and I thought, okay, like I'm gonna go into labor soon, like that's what that means. And I started having pretty like inconsistent contractions, but I thought, okay, this maybe like something's happening, something's like starting to get a move on. Well, thankfully, a few days before that, before my mucus plug came out and everything, I went to a midwife checkup, and she had told me specifically that second baby's on, you usually experience false labor. And so with that in mind, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have these contractions and kind of see what's happening. Because the first time with my daughter, as soon as I had a contraction and like it was pretty consistent, I had texted my mom saying that I was in labor. But this time I was like, I'm gonna wait until they get a little bit stronger because it could be false labor, I don't know. So it was very like inconsistent. My contractions were very inconsistent. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna ignore these because I feel like it's false labor. So we'll see. And then they kind of stopped. And then the next day, kind of were there, stopped. Well, like a week had gone by, and if they started to like be more consistent, but they were very consistent at night. So probably around like 8 o'clock would I have like not strong contractions, but like noticeable contractions, but I could like get through them very easily, just like notice them, move on. And then I would say to myself, okay, I'm gonna go to sleep, and if I wake up because they're bad, I'm gonna text my mom and we're gonna go to the hospital. Well, then I would fall asleep, wake up in the morning, contractions would be gone. And then that started happening like very regularly every single day. Probably like all of my 38-week mark, that was happening every single day. And come to find out, that's called like predominal labor or something. So it's like your body's still preparing, but it could be that the baby wasn't in position or isn't in position, or something's happening with your body where your body's like trying to have these contractions, but it's not able to, or like not fully able to, I guess. So there's probably a lot to that I don't even know, but every single day I was having these contractions, and then they would stop in the morning, and like occasionally I would have them throughout the day, but nothing as consistent as nighttime. I always thought like nighttime, that's when he's gonna come, because I'm having contractions like basically from 8 o'clock until like 2 in the morning. Very, very mild, but very consistent. So that was happening the whole time. Like my mucus plug was falling out just like randomly, just random days, rejuvenating, falling out again, just like all these things. And I think it was at my 38-week appointment that the midwife had said I was 3 centimeters dilated and 75% effaced. So I was like, at any point he could come, and I'm having these contractions, and I was like, it's bound to happen. Like at some point it's bound to happen. But still, like nothing was happening. So that kind of went into like my 39th week, still like nothing was happening, and I was starting to get like kind of like annoyed at this point, and what's the word, like expectant, and almost like the little boy, you know, cried wolf, because he's having these contractions. My body's having these contractions, but I just don't know when he's coming at all, and it could be at any point, and I just like have to be on guard all the time. So I was starting to get like a little bit anxious, and I would even go places and be like, I'm having a contraction, but you know, it's fine because I've been having them for weeks now. And so I started to become like very just like I don't even know. Like, I don't know what my body's doing, but I'm having contractions and something's happening. Something has to be happening. So that kept happening 39th week. And then my mom decided to come into town the weekend before I turned 40 weeks, because she was like, you know, I just want to be there just in case, you know, like to prepare, but hopefully he comes soon. So she comes or whatever, and like I'm doing all these curb walks and everything just to try to like position him correctly, because I'm like, maybe it's the positioning that he needs to change or all this stuff. So that was Saturday that we were doing like a bunch of those curb walks and everything. Well, then Sunday we get up, and again, like all this time I'm having contractions at night, but nothing's happening in the morning. So wake up, get ready for church, like, you know, everything's normal. I go to church and thinking like, maybe today's the day. I felt like the Lord was saying that day was the day, but like I just didn't know. So we're in church and we're listening to the pastor, and I'm like, this is a good message, like listening very intently, and all of a sudden I feel like a gush. And I'm like, I know what that gush feels like because I gushed the first time. And so it's like, you know, gushing, and all of a sudden I sit up. I'm so glad I was wearing a dress. But I did get some water or amniotic fluid on the seat, and I'm like rushing to the bathroom, and I check, and sure enough, it is my water. I'm not peeing myself or anything. And so I was like, okay, great. But I wasn't having any contractions, and I hadn't had any contractions that entire morning, and my water broke, no contractions. What's going on? So no contractions. People are asking me like if my water broke, because I'm like rushed out, you know, and I'm like, yeah, my water broke, but I don't feel a contraction. Well, then probably about like 10 minutes later do I start feeling a contraction, but very mild, more intense than it had been, but still very mild. So I was talking to a lady, and I was like, oh, feeling a contraction, and my water broke. And she was like, we should go to the hospital. And I was like, I don't think so. Because again, like I did not want to go to the hospital early, because of the stress and worry that I had from the first time. I was like, I'm gonna wait until I feel a contraction. I'm not gonna go to the hospital too early. I'm just not. And so she was like joking, or she was saying that, and I was like, oh no, it's fine. And then other people would ask me, and I'd be like, oh no, you know, I don't think I need to go, whatever. So I just didn't. And my friends were able to pray over me, and so it was just like a really cool experience. But we did leave early to go back to my house, so that I can make sure like everything's okay, and you know, could labor at home and things like that. So got home, took a shower, did all the exercises, you know, tried to get him in position, like all this stuff. Well, church was in the morning, and I labored from in the morning time to, what time did we leave? 6:45 in the evening. And I had called my midwife to make sure that I didn't need to go in, because my mom was there and she wanted to make sure that, you know, everything was okay. So I was like, I'll call. And they said, technically, like, you don't have to come in, but we don't like, if your water is broken, we don't like you to go past 18 hours of not being close to the hospital. So she was like, you can labor for as long as possible, but 18 hours or earlier, you should come in. So I was like, okay. So I'm laboring, all at home, like doing the ball, doing squats, like a bunch of different things to try to get this baby progressing, because from morning time when my water broke all the way up to before we left to the hospital, I was not experiencing any intense contractions whatsoever. it was almost like my body just wasn't ready. It was just so strange. So I was starting to get a little bit nervous and a little bit frustrated because I was like, I really don't want to go to the hospital and like be on drugs or them like put me on Pitocin and speed up the labor or like something. I really didn't want that. And I was super nervous about that. So I was like, I just need to keep trying. I need to keep trying something. So I laid down on my side on our couch, and I was like, I had something, in between my legs. I was like, maybe I'll use this as like a peanut to kind of like labor sideways. And I was pressing on the top of my stomach, and all of a sudden I felt a bone like pop in my stomach. Like it didn't feel like my water. It felt like a bone. And all of a sudden, that's when I experienced a contraction that was more severe than I had. It was still manageable, but a little bit more intense. And I just felt like maybe I popped him into position or something happened, because I was starting to experience more intense contractions. So then I go to the bathroom and I'm seeing blood on my pad, and I come out and I was like, I think we need to probably go to the hospital. And right when I said that, I was starting to experience a more intense contraction. So we grabbed the bags. I got my AirPods because I was like, I'm going to be in the zone listening to some Jesus music and like, trying to worship through these contractions because I'm going to do it. Like this time I really, really wanted to go unmedicated. Not for like any other reason other than my epidural was actually like really great. Like the first time it was really great. But this time I really wanted to know my body and experience the birth, just to have like, different, whatever it's called, experiences, and see which one I liked better. So I think my baby's crying. What was I saying? So got my AirPods, and then we get into the car and I was like, oh, Con, I forgot my cameras, because I wanted to film and I wanted to take pictures. If we would have left 5 minutes earlier, man, I probably would have had that baby in the car because he had to like get out of the car and go and search. And thinking about it now, wow, I probably shouldn't have done that because I'll tell you. So he goes to get the cameras, comes back, and while I'm in the car, I'm starting to experience like more intense labor pains. And like my mom can see me and her and Eva can see me, and I'm like really trying to like hold it together because Eva's right there and I don't want her to see me like in pain because she's just a very empathetic person and I don't want her to worry about me at all. And so I'm starting to have one. So we leave and I'm like worried for a second, like we're leaving and I'm like, oh no, I forgot my birth plan. Didn't even need it. But Connor calls my mom. He's like, oh, just so you know, we forgot it. If you want to like bring it to us, whatever. And so he's kind of getting lost. And I'm like, no, you need to go this way. While I'm having like these intense contractions, and I'm just trying to be in the zone with listening to music and worshiping and like getting through each contraction and breathing and like the techniques that I had learned on YouTube or whatever. So all of that's happening. Finally, we get there and we go to the front, and the guy is like the slowest in writing our names down, making sure we have our masks, all that stuff. And still, I'm with my headphones on, just like, just breathing. And like every single contraction, just like holding onto Connor's hand as he's trying to tell all of these people, like, this is our name, here's our ID, like, blah, 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 blah. And so finally, like, we go to the elevator. We go up to the elevator, and we're waiting behind a lady, and I guess her mom, at Triage, which is like the in-between to make sure you're pregnant or in labor. And we're waiting there, and I'm just, again, breathing, holding onto his hand, contracting, listening to my music. This lady is taking forever. The receptionist is taking forever. I'm breathing like hardcore. Finally, we get to the front, and she's talking to me. I'm not listening at this point. I don't care who's talking to me. I'm not talking to you. I am laboring hardcore. And so she like automatically goes to Connor. Connor's talking to her. Like, he knows I'm not listening. He's trying to like be as helpful as possible and answer all the questions for me. So thankfully, I think I only needed to answer one question. I took my AirPod out, answered it, put it back in. And then we go and wait. And when we go to wait, like right before the doors, it goes from me holding one hand of his and breathing to now like having to lean onto him through each contraction. And so I'm like leaning onto him and just like being in the contraction and just like breathing hardcore. And they're starting to get more and more and more intense. And we're just waiting there, waiting for somebody to come and bring us back to check if I'm in labor or whatever. So they opened the doors finally, and we had probably waited out there for like 5 minutes. We got to the hospital, so at 6, or we left my house at 6:45. So we probably got to the hospital about 7 o'clock. And then waiting all of that probably, I don't know, it was 15 at this point, whatever time it was. We left our house at 6:45. So we went through the doors. She asked if I needed to use the bathroom. So I went to go use the bathroom, and there was more blood. So I was walking towards Connor. We were like the 4th person down. And I said, Connor, you need to tell them that I am bleeding more. And I'm like breathing through like continuing intense contractions. The lady comes in, the nurse, and she says, okay, I need you to get on the bed and put this robe on, and I'm gonna check you, and then leaves. And I told Connor, I was like, I can't put this robe on. I can't put the robe on. I can't get on the bed. I am in so much pain right now. And in my mind, I feel like, I'm not putting this robe on. But it was more like, okay, my phone ran out of storage, so I have to use Connor's. Where was I? Okay, so it was more like pleading, like I could not get on the bed. I could not do anything. Like these contractions were so intense. Like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move. I just couldn't. So she comes back in and she's like, I'm gonna need you to get on the bed. And I'm like pleading, like, I can't get on the bed. I can't get on the bed. And she's like, I need you to get on the bed, and just telling me like what she needs me to do. And I'm like, I can't. And so she's like trying to figure out how to like maybe get underneath my dress. Thankfully, I wore a dress because I thought if I'm about to have this baby, I'm gonna wear a dress, which I'm so glad I did. So she's like trying to figure out how to get in my dress and like everything, but she's like, I can't, like, I need you to get on the bed. So I'm just like crying at this point, like, I don't want to get on the bed. And so Connor and her like both kind of like try to lift me up and then like put me back. And she checks me and she says, okay, you're a 6. And when I heard you're a 6, I'm pretty sure everything in me just like shut down, because I was like, no way I'm at a 6. This is no way I'm at a 6. And she said that, and I just like felt distraught because of how much pain I was in only being at a 6. And so I get off the bed, and she's like, are you gonna get the epidural? And I was like, yes, give me the epidural, because I was like, no way can I keep going, this is too painful. But now looking back, I'm pretty sure I was in transition, because like I've always heard like when you want the epidural and it's the most painful, you're in transition. And I feel like I was, because right after I said, yes, I want the epidural, I told Connor, you need to tell them that I'm about to have this baby. He's coming out right now. And he calls and he's like, she says the baby's coming now. And I hear them say, she's at a 6. Like they don't believe that I'm about to have the baby because I'm at a 6. So they like, for 3 or 4 nurses come in and they're like, okay, we need to get you onto the bed. And again, I'm pleading like, I can't get on the bed. Because I'm just so distraught at what's happening. And my body is in so much pain. And my AirPods are already out. Like I took my AirPods out because I just couldn't not listen to music. I couldn't be in the zone anymore with everything happening around me and them trying to stick their hand in me and then tell me that I'm a 6 and just all this stuff. So I didn't have any music anymore. And I'm just like crying and so distraught at this point. And so then they're like, okay, we need to get you on the bed. And I turn to Connor and I tell him, like I hold on to him and I'm like, I can't get on the bed. I'm having this baby now. And I'm like screaming this, and I just drop to my knees and I'm just crying. And I'm like, the baby is coming now. And I'm dropping to my knees because I'm in so much pain. But being on my knees and being that low is causing me more pain because he was coming, because I needed to like at this point I'm like grunting because I'm like, he's coming. And I feel the urge to poop, which if you feel the urge to poop, the baby's coming. And I start like pushing him already, and they're trying to get me up, like, you need to get on the bed, you need to get on the bed, because they didn't want me to birth on the floor. And so I like stand back up, and I'm just like shaking, and Connor's like, just get on your knees, just get on your hands and knees on the bed. And he was amazing just the whole time of my birth. Like, he was so amazing. But so I like climb up, I'm on my hands and knees, and as soon as my hands get on my hands and knees, they lift my dress, put something over me, and like cart me out as fast as they can. And I'm on my hands and knees, like laboring, pushing him out, and I'm hitting all of these bumps in the hallway as they try to get me to the closest, most convenient room possible. And they're just going, and as soon as we park, I have like one giant grunt push, and he came out. And then Connor's like, keep going. And I do one more loud grunt, excruciating, painful push, and he like flies out basically. And I was so just mind blown. Just like, I didn't even know what to think. I don't even think I had any thoughts. I was just so, I don't know what's happening right now. I don't know what just happened. It was bizarre. Like within 5 minutes of us being back there in triage, I went from intense pain to then them carting me and then giving birth. And then in 2 pushes, I pushed him out, and they handed me him like underneath me, and I'm holding on to him, and I'm just like, what? Like, just so out of it. And then I get on my side, and I'm like cuddling him, and I was never the person with Eva or him to be like just like crying because I'm so in love with this baby that's on my chest. Like both times I was very just distraught and very just mind blown at what has just happened, and just like taking it all in. And so yeah, that was the birth. Even if I wanted to take pictures, even if I wanted to video it, I could not have because it happened so incredibly fast, like from 6 to transition to birth, all within 5 minutes. And honestly, I don't know if I was at a 6, maybe I was, and then my body just like boom hit the transition and then went into like very like bypassed everything, went into active like birth giving. But it was bizarre. It was bizarre. I birthed on my hands and knees. A very different experience than with Eva. Hers was pushing for a long time, pushing on my back. Tried to push on my hands and knees. Didn't really work with her because I also had the epidural, I guess, and there was just a lot with that. But very different experience. Very different. So yeah, that was my birth experience. I'm sure I left something out, but it was bizarre and just crazy. Also very traumatic. So birth is just traumatic in general, regardless if it happens very slowly or very fast. But yeah, I hope I didn't forget anything, but it was just, when I think about it, it's unbelievable what happened. Like, the pain that I experienced too, birth is painful. If you didn't know, birth is painful, but I don't know what I would do again. I don't know if I would choose epidural again. I don't know if I would choose natural, because natural, like, I was able to feel like everything. I didn't experience the ring of fire, didn't with either of them, which I've heard like is a thing, but I didn't experience that with them. Because I guess one, I was on epidural, and I don't know, and then maybe second, it just happened so incredibly fast. But yeah, I didn't experience ring of fire. I don't know which one I would do again. They both are their own thing. I'm glad that I was able to feel my body, because I knew as soon as I was going to birth him, like, it was going to happen. Like, my body was telling me he is coming out right now. I'm screaming this to everybody here. He's coming out. You need to listen to me. Please listen to me. And they just didn't. And I was like, okay, well, He's about to fly out my butt. Well, you know, not really my butt, but felt like it. So yeah, I don't know what I would do. And I remember thinking when I was pushing, like, I had read something somewhere that was like, pushing is like a relief for your body, and so you want to push. And I remember thinking that, like, so I was very aware of my body whenever I gave birth to Asher. With Eva, it was very different, where I wasn't aware of what was happening. I couldn't really feel her. I could, like, as she was coming out, because I could feel like she would go out and then in, and like very just back and forth, and that hurt a lot. But with everything else, like, it just wasn't as, like, my body wasn't a part of the birth with Eva, and my body was very much a part of the birth with him. So anyways, yeah, that was my birth story. Very crazy, very fast. Thankful, very thankful that the timing of everything got me at least to the hospital, and I didn't have a car birth, even though I probably would have if I waited any longer. Then after that pop, once that pop happened and going to the bathroom, like, everything aligned so perfectly to be able to birth at the hospital, like right whenever I got there. And that's really what I wanted. Like, the entire time I wanted to just go into the hospital and have the birth. But like, the way that it happened, I was like, did I actually want this? Because that was terrible. I mean, it was good, but it was like the speed of it, like, I don't even know. Like, I wanted that, but I also don't know if I wanted that looking back. Like, looking back, I'm glad that happened because it was so fast. But like, if I would have known that would have happened, I don't know if I would have wanted that, if that makes sense. So anyways, yeah, that was it. Still just blows my mind. Anyways, that's my birth story. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Thanks for listening to this crazy story.